How many exercises do we need to maximize muscle growth? Some iron purists suggest that heavy compound movements are all you need, while others claim more nuanced exercise selection is necessary to optimize our results. A recent study by Burke and colleagues provides some really nice data to examine this idea further. Deciding which exercises to include in your program is a foundational component of training. There are all kinds of arguments people make in support of including exercises in your program, but in my opinion, one of the most important is thinking through the functions of the muscle you wish to train. As an example, let's think about the barbell back squat. Some will say the squat is the king of all exercises and it's all you really need to fully develop your lower body. However, if we closely examine the basic functions of the hamstrings, this claim gets a bit murky. The hamstrings are what are called a biarticular muscle, which just means they cross two joints, and in this case, the knee and the hip. When they produce force, the hamstrings assist in flexing the knee and extending the hip. Crucially, in the concentric portion of a squat, we are simultaneously extending our knees and hips. These movements essentially cancel out the actions of the hamstrings, limiting its ability to contribute to the movement much at all. If we look at the longitudinal studies that have participants squat for some period of time and measure growth of the lower body musculature, we can see little to no hypertrophy of the hamstrings, supporting this idea that biarticular muscles may not be trained with movements that oppose their actions. The study used a within-participant unilateral design in which the right limb of each participant was randomized into one of four conditions, containing one exercise in the following two sets. For the quadriceps, we had the leg press and the knee extension, both performed unilaterally, and for the calves, we had the straight leg calf raise, performed on a leg press, or a seated calf raise machine. Each participant trained each exercise with 4 sets to momentary failure for each session, which was performed twice per week, with a target repetition range of 8 to 12 reps. The researchers measured the muscle size of 5 sites: the vastus lateralis, the rectus femoris, the gastrocnemius at both the medial and lateral heads, and the soleus. Now, before we get to the results, I think it's important to describe what we'd expect if the squat and the hamstring example are generalizable. Because the rectus femoris and the gastrocnemius are biarticular muscles, we'd expect them to be better trained with movements that don't cancel out their functions. Thus, the rectus femoris would be expected to grow better with the knee extension and the gastrocnemius with the straight leg calf raise. When we take a closer look at the results, that's exactly what we see. For the rectus femoris, the knee extension condition had around a 99% probability of exceeding 0, while the straight leg calf raise had around a 90 to 99% probability of exceeding 0 in the gastroc, depending on which head. Now, these differences weren't huge, but for an 8-week study in recreationally trained individuals, the magnitude and the precision of the effects are notable in my opinion. The point here is that to optimize growth of the biarticular muscles, it's probably going to make sense to include exercises that allow them to contribute to the fullest extent. I do think it's important to note that the other exercises did result in some growth. Thus, if you have limited equipment or really enjoy a certain exercise, you can still get a return on your investment and not all hope is lost. The other interesting part of this study is speculating why the monoarticular muscles seem to grow more in the opposite set of exercises. I wouldn't necessarily expect that. There are a few competing hypotheses in my mind. First, it could be that the resistance profiles of the exercises are potentially not controlled here. As an example, in my experience, the resistance profile of most leg press machines is the most challenging in the stretch position, whereas most leg extension machines are the opposite. Alternatively, it could be that the loading demands are spread across less tissue, contributing to a given joint action, such that the training stimulus is more targeted or higher specificity in a sense. Finally, it could just be differences in absolute range of motion for each joint. In my experience, the amount of loaded knee extension I can get with a loaded leg press is far different than a typical leg extension machine. I'm sure there are other explanations, it's undoubtedly a combination of a few of them, but this trend does seem to be observed in the only other study I'm aware of that examines this concept, so it's food for thought. From a practical perspective, I think this study adds to the already solid evidence to suggest that exercise variety is a necessary part of program design to optimize hypertrophy. Specifically for biarticular muscles, exercises that don't train the muscle with conflicting joint actions are needed. As an example, for the quads, you want a traditional squat pattern in an exercise targeted on the rectus femoris, like the leg extension, sissy squat, or reverse Nordic curl. Exercise selection is a key part of program design. For optimizing muscle growth, accounting for some basic anatomy can make sure you're not accidentally leaving gains on the table unnecessarily. If you liked the video, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, and let us know what you'd like to see in the comments below. If you want more free content like this directly in your inbox, sign up for our newsletter, which is the first link below.